Sitting here with Stephen Fong.
Going way back, dude. Yeah.
Dog, crazy dog. You were my next door neighbor. You were by default my first friend. We went to Thornhill together, and then we went to Montera, which I actually have a funny story about us going to Montera that I'm excited to talk about later. But
Okay.
let's talk about a little bit about what you actually do. You know,
Sure.
yeah. What's the life of Stephen Fong like in 2020?
So I'm a musician, and so when you do that, you have like a lot of different things that you do. But most of what I do like during the week is teaching.
Yeah,
Sort of the Zoom setup and stuff. We're pandemic style
right,
right now. Teaching guitar and piano, bass, stuff like that.
right.
I teach a few kids actually too, like how to like make their own beats. I have this one student who's like this little rapper kid, and he like, he makes his own beats
Right.
and raps on them and stuff. So I show him how to do that, and that's kind of unique. And I kind of like that kind of dovetails into the other thing that I do, which is producing and engineering.
All right.
So I'll like work with different people. I'll either, have a beat for them or something, and then they come in and rap over it, and then I'll mix the record and send it off to mastering. And I play in a band, and those are kind of like the three main pillars, I guess, of what I do, and dabble in some audio editing, and it's all kind of like connected, especially like nowadays, like
Yeah.
we do so much stuff on the computer. So if you're handy with that, you can kind of do a lot of different stuff.
For sure. So let's because I'm so fascinated. I wish I was musically gifted in any way. As like I would trade being musically gifted than for being funny any day of the week.
Hmm.
I I I'm so fascinated by how people are still able to create new music. It's like the concept to me is crazy to try to think about. But let's start with you brought up the pandemic and how your businesses had to adjust. Has it helped at all? I mean, with
Yeah,
your music business, I mean, I can kind of see it going either way.
it kind of like, I think now, yeah, I'm in a better place. Like when it started, it was like, it was scary. There was like a lot of uncertainty, and
Right.
like the first few weeks, like I had like no work because like we were just like, oh, we'll just take a couple weeks off. Like this is a 3-week lockdown or whatever, and like
Yeah.
we'll be back. And then and like some people were like willing to try the online thing, because before this I would go to my students' houses and teach them there, right,
Hmm.
like face to face.
Hmm.
So, and there is something that's lost in that, because I think I prefer that
Sure.
style of teaching, but I'm also able to now like teach a lot more people because I'm not driving around all the time.
Was your game plan from the business standpoint? Because you run your own business? I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's all me. Yeah. So, I mean, going back to like, what do I do? Like, I
Right.
do stuff, but there's like, keeping your whatever your accounts and stuff in order, and like trying to learn marketing and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
kind of like grow your brand, I guess, is one of those terms. I don't know,
Right.
like it's a little bit different too, because I mean, I have a couple musical identities as well. So I don't know, just figuring out all that other stuff, and then you get time for the music.
Well, which is amazing. So that's Acumen Productions, right?
Yeah, that's kind of like the company.
All right.
And then within that, yeah, I have different, like my band and like my producer, whatever you want to call that, like persona, and then engineering and stuff in there.
Did you mind the going to different clients' houses to have to teach them, or was the idea for you to get a studio at some point if the money added up right?
Yeah, I think that's always the end goal.
Yeah.
But I have like I have like this room is just like my studio room. Like that's like a guest bed and stuff, and
Hmm.
so it doubles as a couch or whatever. And So yeah, I mean, like someday it'd be really nice to have like a place that I could use like 24 hours and like, because musicians are usually creatures of the night and,
Yeah.
make all the noise you want. And I can't really do certain things in here, like record drums, for example, that would not work well here. So, but for a lot of stuff, like, and this pandemic, like I've been writing a lot of music too, because can't really go out and do a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
I've been able to do that here pretty well. And then for certain things, go out and record drums or whatever. But yeah,
And when you work, I'm assuming the clientele is mostly kids, right?
yeah, kids. It's like actually about half kids, half adults, I would
So
say.
when I'm coaching, when I was coaching basketball, for example,
Mhm.
it'd be you teach the basics, but every now and then you saw that kid that definitely could be the next or something if he
Mhm.
kept at it. Is that like that in music too? Like, when you're working with these people, I'm assuming from they're more of a beginner stage.
Yeah.
Are there things that you see in kids? It's like, oh man, this kid has something.
Yeah, I think like, well, okay, so like to bring in the sports analogy, like
Yeah.
there's like, okay, well, I want to say first off the bat, like I believe in all my students, right? Like they're like, that sounds cheesy, but that's kind of the thing that's like exciting about teaching because you see that like you're like, oh, okay, you could do this, and like maybe even if you think you can't do this,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of like the joy of it. You're like, oh, all right, you like it may take like weeks to get this guitar chord or whatever, but you finally got it, and like, and then there are definitely like students that I have who learn quicker, and you're like, oh, like if you really wanted to go and make your own music or do
Yeah.
this, you definitely could, and I could see that for them. But that's also like bringing in the sports analogy again. It's also consistency, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
people who stay in the music the longest will kind of um, get the most out of it, and that's even if that's like their like life's goal. I think it's important too to like, especially as a music teacher, to not project onto people. Some people just want to learn to play a few chords or play a
Mm-hmm.
song, and some people they do want to like do it as a career and stuff like that. So it just it just depends. But there are definitely like some students where I'm like, oh, okay, like, all right, yeah.
Who do you think you modeled your teaching style after? Because there's obviously the sports analogy, who those who can't do teach, but
Right.
they'll say like people like Michael Jordan, or people would assume that someone like LeBron James or Kobe wouldn't be good coaches. And obviously, I'm not calling you those three people. I'm not putting you in that box. But where are you getting your teaching style from? Because I assume that's not something that just comes naturally.
No, I think you teach like so I had like two main guitar teachers in my life, and then one of them was in Piedmont actually, and that was my school, my middle school and high school teacher. And so like I definitely draw a lot of inspiration from him. He's very like categorical, like
Mm,
okay, you got to work on your entire game, right? Not just
right,
like shooting, but you got to do all the different stuff,
right,
footwork and all that kind of stuff.
right.
And then in college, I had like a very, very different teacher who was just kind of like, you're either going to do it or you're not, right?
Right.
Okay, so practice this. Did you practice it? No. Okay, well, let's just, I mean, it is what it is. Let's just
Yeah.
go where we are, or like, so it's kind of on you to bring yourself more and more into it. So, and that was a very powerful moment for me too, because it was like, in music, and I think a lot of things like this are just like you have to do it for yourself. Like nobody's going to
Mm,
do it for you. I mean, there's definitely exceptions. Like if you're the Justin Bieber of the world, like they're going to swoop in on you and like
yeah.
turn you into just the next Justin Bieber. But that's like 0.1% of musicians out there. Most people are actually just doing it on their own and making it happen. And I think we live in the age of that right now. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I think this with like the podcast. Like you just if you want to go and do something, you just go and do it, set it up. But like if we were living like 30 years ago or less, maybe we would have to like go to a radio station and like
Right.
blah blah blah, like set this whole groundwork, which,
Right.
not to discredit those things, but there's just more avenues for that kind of
The,
stuff nowadays.
the barriers to entry has definitely been reduced with the advancement of technology, the internet. We all have the ability now to create at least a SoundCloud, right, and put our stuff out there. But with that, I think that this. it becomes oversaturated too, right? It's tough now to how do you get your voice or your music or your chords out. So I mean, with your beats, I mean, oh man, all right, let's take it back. Let's take it back to the start. So your sister's obviously is not obviously, but your sister's very artistically gifted. I've noticed as well.
Oh
I
yeah.
I had no idea that y'all two would. I mean, I know your mom and your dad, obviously. Like, where is this artistic, where's artistic ability coming from? Like, where was this something that was ingrained in
Um,
y'all from an early age? I mean, I know your family always had like an appreciation for some fine art and everything, but I didn't know it extended out this far.
yeah, yeah. I mean, well, like, like shout out to them, like, because they were always supportive of us, doing that kind of thing. They just were like, they were always, the bottom line was always like, whatever you want to do, like, go and do it, like, we'll
Yeah.
support you. We won't like tell you to be, a doctor or whatever, engineer, like, so that helps a lot, I think, and I can see that in teaching too. Like you're asking me like about if there's a kid who could go, be the next big musician, but it also depends a lot like on their support system,
Uh-huh.
so 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 yeah, they definitely gave that to us, and just even having the blessing of like whatever you want to do, just go do it. We'll support you,
Yeah.
what ways we can, and also yeah, they were like artistic. My mom actually has like an art history background, and
Okay.
yeah, so and my dad used to do photography in high school and stuff, so they definitely like um there was music and stuff around the house, and I learned guitar from my dad like first. He was the first person I ever learned guitar from, actually, like
Okay.
had his old guitar and then kind of went from there. So they gave us the springboard and then just kind of let it happen. So
So I knew you obviously, like we were talking about at the top. I knew you grew up next door to me. I remember going to your house, man. I remember, watching the Cosby Show at your house. I remember watching
yeah,
all the Bruce Lee movies. I remember watching all the Godzilla, like all just
Jackie Chan.
man, right? Like, and you invited me over for Chinese New Year, and
Yeah.
my dad used to give us rides. Your parents used to give us rides to places. So I knew you all the way up until the sixth grade is when I transferred, and it sucked because I mean our group of friends. I feel like for the most part we were all really tight, right? There wasn't like the popular and the less popular kids. I feel like our school at Thornhill was really, really, really close. Our grade, for example,
Yeah,
for the most
totally.
part.
Yeah.
And I remember, man, me and you were in the car, and my dad. I think it was either my dad or your mom was driving us somewhere, and you just said, "Man, whenever I get to uh, um, Montera, I just want to make sure I fly under the radar as much as possible." And I was like, "Why? Why would you say that?" Because we've always been pretty outgoing. Our school was, and you were like, "Man, I'm not trying to get my ass beat." And I remember you telling me stories about
I didn't know
kids
I was
that,
that smart back then.
huh?
I didn't know I was that smart back then.
Yo, right? Like, no, I remember you telling me that, and I think, like from that moment on, I really I kind of was like a quiet person from that point, from there until like college, really.
Huh.
Because what you said made sense. Like if you stay under the radar, you're really not gonna be bothered too much. No one's gonna really pick on you or whatever, and it's easy to kind of float under the radar and just kind of do your thing. And from that moment until college, bro, I was damn near an introvert, which is crazy.
Damn, that's so. I mean, I can't believe that, man. Like,
Yeah.
that's a crazy memory. I mean, I think now I feel like I have the same kind of attitude, but it's a little bit more like listen twice as much as you talk.
Mm,
That's
right.
kind of, I think that's what that evolved into. But I must have been shook after that first tour of Montera, dude, because that was like Gen Pop, man. We were like really in the thick of it then. I was like, oh my god.
Yo, Montero was funny, man, because it was a hodgepodge of like kids from the Oakland Hills, and then you had the kids um, that were local to the area, which obviously didn't have as good of family backgrounds as we had growing up. And like, for example, I remember there was I think he was a seventh or eighth grader when we were in the sixth grade. And I think this kid had a kid like in the eighth grade.
Oh yeah, I kind of remember that.
And I think he was like, I think that he had been held back already a year, and he was at the age where he couldn't be held back anymore. So they're just gonna, right? Like, for example, and like I
Yeah,
used to ride the bus with, obviously where my mom lives. She lived on, East Oakland, not, so the kids
oh yeah,
that
you took the 18,
I
huh?
took the 18 bus, right? So it was like you're leaving fucking Fairyland and you're going all the way over to like where Simba's not supposed to roam over to. There were times I got kicked. Every kid got kicked off the bus because of how rowdy they were after school. I remember that.
Yeah, I think some of the craziest like fights or things that I ever saw at Montero were on the bus, not at the actual school.
The poor bus drivers, man, they didn't want to deal with any of that.
They didn't give they would kick everybody. Yeah,
They didn't care where they were. Yeah,
I took that 18 a couple of times with Javier and Sam.
Yeah.
Down Park. Yeah, that was a different bus ride. Yeah, Montero was like, that was like when the first time I kind of left the bubble of Montclair. I was
Right.
like, oh, there's like when people think about Oakland, they have a specific idea, but like my Oakland up to that point had just been Montclair.
Yeah.
And then going to Montero was like, whoa, okay, like, all right.
Yeah.
And I think that was good, man, because I don't know what would have been like for me in high school or something, just not knowing what the rest of the world was like,
Well, I'm appreciating you saying that, man, because, me going to Piedmont, always in the back of my mind, I had, well, what happened to that bubble that I was tight with?
Mm-hmm.
I had that in the back of my mind all the way up until through I graduated high school. It was, damn, this sucks. Like I had like a really, really dope core, good group of friends. We went on like the Marin Headlands and Coloma trip. We went on those field trips and we were all a good group of kids. My dad, to this day, like the only compliment he gave me as a kid was, "You picked good friends." You know what I'm saying? That's like, right. So that was something that was always in the back of my mind. So you ended up going to O'Dowd after Montero.
Yeah.
What was the O'Dowd like? Was there any points that stuck out from you, or did you start doing music then, or when did the music start playing a factor?
Yeah, I was in band and stuff in middle school, and I got my first guitar like when I was in fifth grade, but I didn't really play a ton until I started taking lessons, which was like middle school. Yeah. And that's when I started getting more into it. And then I went to O'Dowd, and then, I met freshman year. I wasn't in band, but whatever. After that, I started getting into jazz band and stuff. And that's where I met like a group of friends that Steven, so to this day, like one of those guys, like, plays bass in the band with me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, we were like living in that same house together and stuff. And just,
right.
And when I first moved into that house, it was like all people from high school that I knew that played music and stuff, So that's definitely where it like took off for me. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna, this is what I want to do. And I had a really good teacher then too, Mr. Randolph, who's still band director there. I think he does everything. And and he was I remember I auditioned for the jazz band, and I was so freaking nervous, like, and then I like barely passed. He took a chance on me, and then like years later, he was like, you got a good voice and you can like sing and play guitar. Like you should do something with that. And so again, it's just kind of like that was an interesting time. And I was an angsty teenager,
What did you like about playing? Like, for me, like with comedy, I don't write like, oh, like, did you hear the one about the, most of my stuff is like personal stuff. And I really enjoy, being able to make people laugh in awkward situations. Cause like most of the stories that I will somehow confine down into a line that I use on stage or whatever, is mostly, like awkward or what could be negative or sad situations, and I just I use those moments as the jokes, I guess. And so that was fun for me to get reactions out of people. That's why I do it, right? So like for you, the music, what part of the music did you really get into, or why did you keep at it?
I think that there's definitely that part of it. Like I think the performing part, like so like when you're on stage and you're like telling jokes and stuff, and the crowd is like with you and they're responding, and then I don't know if you ever have this thing where it's like you just feel like it's just kind of happening,
Yeah.
like every time you say something, it's just building and building.
Right.
Like you're on this roll, and there's that part of it, like, but for music, and instead of like telling jokes, it's just you're like picking all the right notes or playing something, it's just kind of like, and you're getting this feedback from people, I think that's one of the sad things about this time right now is like there's no concerts, and there is something about that, I think, in like concerts, stand-up, sports even, like people on the stage do something and then the crowd reacts, and it becomes this like circular kind of feedback loop, so there's like that part of it, and I really enjoy that. But the other part of it for me too is the like making something new, which is usually solitary, right? That's just like you by yourself. Like I don't know, for you that might be writing the jokes and being like, oh, like this is good, I can't wait to try this out on the stage. But I like making music too, as pretty much as much as I like performing it, for sure. So that's a different like feeling, I guess.
Yeah. Are you at a place with when you write a new song or a beat where you're like, I hope they like it, or are you at a place where that the right ears are gonna like it? Again, for me, when I first started doing comedy, I lived and died by every crowd reaction, right? It didn't matter how many good shows I had. If I had a bad show, I thought that I was the lowest piece of scum on the planet, and I thought that my life was worthless. You know what I'm saying? And when I would write and say, I hope they laugh at this point, versus I think the evolution, I'm a lot more confident in my material. I don't think I'm the funniest person on the planet by any means, but I do think that the right ears will appreciate, the stuff that I'm trying to put together. And it's not, when I'm writing, it's not, oh, I hope this is funny. It's, there is a part up to me at telling the story right. But I know that the stuff that I'm telling is gonna work. I just need to tell it right.
Yeah, for sure. Like the execution.
Yeah, the execution, right.
Yeah, I kind of, I agree with you. I think that I think it's a balance between those two things, right? Like, oh, this is definitely gonna hit, and like this is like crap. I'm like the worst ever, like like it's hard because sometimes I'll like make something and I'm like, oh, this is killing. Like this sounds so good. And then the next day I'll like listen back to it and I'm like, this is so fucking basic. Like, just kind of like, but, and then sometimes you have to go back and you're like, no, but I really got to trust my gut. Like this thing, like maybe if I think it is really like, a cheap thrill or whatever, like actually there's something there, but maybe I have to restructure it a bit, right? So like it delivers the right way.
Right.
So, I mean, it's yin and yang. I think you just go back and forth, but like more and more I try to trust my gut. Like when I do come up with something that I'm like, oh yeah, like okay, there's something there, maybe this is a diamond in the rough, but like if I keep working at it. And sometimes there's like you're just trying to make something work, but maybe it's not really that good anyway, but you're like, oh, maybe if I like do this one thing, it'll sound okay. So how's that for a non-answer?
Well, I mean, listen, this is a conversation and this is not a SAT test, so there's no wrong answers pretty much. Was there like a really early affirming moment that happened that like made you want to stick in the music lane? Validating?
There was some moment, I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, being validated obviously is like part of it. Like you want people
all
to
of it.
What you do. Yeah.
Right.
But you want to like what you're doing too. So
for sure.
But I think there's some of that external validation is just like I'm on the right path.
For sure. Right. Right.
This is just it's a two-way street. Like, again, it's like that can't be the only thing, but I think it is an important part of what you're making. So for one thing, like early on for me was when I was first starting to produce. I was in college, and then I had been making some beats and raps with a friend of mine, and like we got into this. It's like a campus movie fest. That's what it's called. So it's like a college campus like movie festival, and
Right.
everybody puts together a short film. So I did the soundtrack for that, and we actually won best soundtrack in that festival. And it's like,
Wow.
I mean, it's like across the country and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
So um, that was a moment where I was like, okay, maybe I'm not that bad at this, you know. Like that's like maybe I would just keep going and see where this takes me. And
Right. Now,
it,
when you were in the competition, did y'all know you were gonna win? You know, or was it one of those where it's like, how did this happen?
no, yeah, it was like we didn't even get our foot in the door through that. Like um, we got nominated for best edit, or somehow we got in for best editing, and like
Uh-huh.
we did all this crazy stuff. We were like, you know, like having like, yeah, just like it was like a campaign, like come on, like go vote for us, da da da. And then once we were
Yeah.
in for that, then the judges actually look at everything else, and they're like, well, you should also be in it for this or something.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
it totally flipped around. I was like, yeah, you know, I was like sweating, man. I was like, I don't think, oh, what, these people are gonna actually listen to my music? What?
Right.
No, no, don't do that.
Right. Right. Right.
You know. So, and so like just to kind of wrap that feeling up, like, yeah, like I think the external validation is always helpful, but I think the stuff that I've actually been like that I've had some good feedback from, at least I'll just put it that way, is
Yeah.
like the stuff that I always like felt good about from the beginning.
Mm.
You know, I was like, or like I put the actual like put my actual soul into it, not just kind of like making something because I think it would be, you know, popular. And then like trust me, I've made my fair share of like trap beats and stuff, and like, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
This is gonna hit.
yeah, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it is fun, but it was like, yeah, there's definitely like a phase, you know, I was like trying to like make all these like hot beats, you know, because I wanted
Yeah.
to like have people like mess with them, and then people were just responding more to the stuff that I made out of just because like I was having fun or whatever, you know.
Right. Have you ever tried that I'll just be an Uber driver and just play my music all the time in the car?
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Or just hold your rider hostage.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, check this out, man. Check this out. Yeah.
So you went to UC Riverside, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Was music the focus there too, or what was the game plan from there? I mean, how did you think you were
Yeah.
gonna?
I was always gonna do like a double major or something. Like I looked at a bunch of schools that had music and business.
Yeah.
So I chose Riverside for the business school because they have a pretty good business school there. And then I like was there for a couple weeks, and I was like looking at all the like business school people
Yeah.
like dressing up in suits on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I was like, man, I don't know. Like, I don't know. So that plan got trashed pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then I was like music was still a part of it, but I kind of bounced around. I was undeclared for like maybe almost 2 years. Just
Yeah.
kind of, like taking all the humanities
Prerequisites
classes.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good though. I loved all those. I think that ultimately made me a better musician and artist today. Like just taking a bunch of stuff that was outside my realm, you know.
Right.
And then I got into the music program at the last 2 years of it. So I left with a music major, no business degree,
Right.
no business minor. I
Yeah.
had to learn all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the real world. So I kind of wish I had done at least a minor or something like that.
So
But
like looking back in that moment, are you like graduation's approaching? Are you confident in what's gonna happen in your life at this point? I'll say for me, I graduated with a business degree, but I didn't have a job lined up like so many of my other friends, out of school, and it's like I just had this like, oh fuck, like what am I gonna do now? Like
oh yeah,
my whole like growing up, my whole goal was just to get to college, and now I'm about to finish college. I'm like, oh shit, like what do I do? What do
now?
I do? Yeah, what do I do from here?
Yeah, yeah. I was. Well, I mean, I was in the music department, so pretty much nobody I knew in my class had a job lined up
Right.
afterward. I mean, most everybody was probably moving home or something like that, and like just figuring it out, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And or going on to grad school, like that's kind of the path, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
But I was like, I don't want to do any more student debt, and I don't
Yeah.
grad school. Not, never, but
At the
They're gonna
time, it wasn't.
to
That
go.
wasn't what. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was working at Guitar Center at the time in San Bernardino, and I transferred from that store up to the Emeryville store.
Uh
I moved home for a bit. I worked there for a while, and then I learned a lot about like that was probably my first introduction into gear and like engineering because
huh.
I was in the pro audio department. So I wasn't like slinging guitars really. I was doing like microphones and stuff, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of game from people in that department who were like all really talented and like knew a lot of stuff, and they had like business sense too. So that was a second education for me for
Right.
sure. And yeah, but not really, man. I mean, Guitar Center, like I was like, all right, well, I got a job,
Right. Right.
I'm gonna live
Right.
off with a job,
Right.
um, better than no job, and
Right.
so I lived on my own off of that too for a little while, but
Yeah. Man, where I'm like really fascinated is like, for example, the music production. The I don't even know where I would begin. If someone gave me a beat and like lyrics, I don't know the first thing about getting somebody on beat. I don't get the tempos. I don't know how you make a new beat. Like all that stuff is so fascinating to me. Especially we've lived 2020 years on Earth. Well, after AD, but and there's like new music still to this day being made, and I can't comprehend that.
dude, it's actually, man. Look, we got to make a beat sometime together, man. It's like it's super easy actually, especially now. Like it's
Yeah,
just like even some of my kids, the students, they're doing class online now, and like they're in their music class at like public elementary school. They're like having to make these beats online,
right.
and it really is as easy as like just kind of like learning to click some squares on a website,
But I
right?
mean, like,
Yeah.
do you have like a thing in your head that you're like, I want to match this tempo, or do you hear a song and you're like, oh, I think that if I sampled this part of it, that would be cool. Like, or do you just literally start typing stuff or playing different notes and stuff and like, oh, this would sound good together?
All of those things, all of them. So it just
Okay.
depends. You're like, I mean, that's the thing about music too, is that it's so like, I don't know, in our subconscious, you just feel it. Like when you hear a song that you like, it feels good. Like you're just gonna move to it, or
Right.
enjoy it. Like you can't kind of get out of the way of that unless you plug your ears or like leave the room, like,
Right.
and that's the thing. Like if you enjoy music and you like listening to it, like you could definitely make it because something is going to hit you just like, oh, I just love that drum beat, or like that sample, yeah, or melody. It just the different ways, and like that's something I do when I'm making beats more specifically is like, I noticed I was starting with the drums a lot, but
Mhm.
like maybe I'm going to start with a sample today, or like only or work in reverse, like try to like get an acapella and build something around that. Like there's no rules, there's no wrong way to do it,
Right.
this is how it makes you feel at the end of the day. So
Yeah. Damn, man. Yeah. Um, are there like producers or musicians that you really admire, or people that you kind of uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like, yeah, model your game around.
oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of people that I was like trying to copy, early, and I think I still feel like I do that, and I
Hmm.
think just in doing that, like it's scary how close you can get these days, actually, like
Hmm.
to sound exactly like. I mean, Kaytranada, for example, is like one of my big influences. Like I love Kaytranada,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of like stuff you can even buy nowadays, like
to help
yeah,
match those sounds.
yeah, Kaytranada's drum set or whatever, and like
Yeah.
or something like that. And he's one of them. I mean, yeah, Jay Dilla is like, he's kind of, uh, he's almost like Jesus,
Right.
like
Right.
don't be an infidel.
Yeah.
And then early stuff too, man. Like the first like hip hop records I started listening to were like hieroglyphics actually back in the day, and those albums have some really great production on them, just really cool shit.
Did you see the documentary about them on YouTube?
No, not yet.
It was just either it's an old doc and it just populated up to everyone's YouTube now, but a few people have seen it pop up, and it's good though. It basically it takes you through a one of their high road days, which I'm assuming you've been to before,
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
and it took you through their set list, and it basically broke down every song, where it came from, how they put it together, and then the
Oh,
members of the group. It was really dope. Yeah, it was good.
okay. No,
Yeah.
yeah, send that my way.
So you said something earlier. We're gonna kind of take a pivot here. Hope you don't mind.
No.
Uh,
Are you gonna tell the tick story, dude?
oh my gosh, dude, that's funny. I didn't even remember about that. You
Oh
tell
yeah.
that you tell that one.
Okay, just well, I think we're like 5 or 6 or something like that,
Yeah,
and I had a tick on my head from somewhere. I don't know how. I
we
must
were
have,
always we were always rolling around doing stupid shit. Oh yeah,
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 in the backyard or like climbing around or something.
yeah.
And I had a tick in my head, and like we couldn't get it out. So your dad, who's the ER doc, came over,
Oh my gosh.
and I forget he like burned it out or something. They don't like.
Yeah,
I
I
think they have
remember
like,
he heated like a needle. I remember, or a pin.
yeah, something like that. And I'm like lying on the bed and like screaming. This. My mom was telling this story too. I'm like, it hurts.
I remember the scream, man. I can remember the scream.
And your dad's like working on it, like getting the tick out, and then you're standing next to him and looking at me. I'm screaming, and you're just going, "Does it hurt? Does it hurt?"
Oh my gosh, dude. Yo, so here's what I was gonna ask. Like, obviously we've known each other since we were that young, right? And then you talked about leaving your Montclair bubble, that first group of friends, and then in college, I'm sure you make a new group of friends, and now in the late stages. I mean, who, where do you feel like your adult personality finally took form? Like do you think the circles that you surrounded yourself around early on would get along with the folks that you today? Because I think at some level, like old friends, they kind of force it, right? But like where I really test my where if my circles would get along with each other pretty much, right?
Yeah,
Would my friends from here get along with my friends here? And for the most part, in my later years, most of my friend groups do get along with each other, which
yeah,
is makes me very happy.
yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, I've been fortunate enough to have that same thing happen to me. Like the place where I was living before, like
Yeah.
that was like all people I knew from high school, and then like over the years, just through visiting, or like even when I left, like people I knew in college who needed a place to live in the Bay, like live there now.
Hmm.
So those circles were always kind of like just interacting with each other, and like throughout the holidays, like tons of people come back here and stuff.
Hmm.
So I've had the opportunity to have like worlds collide like quite a bit, and
Hmm.
it's pretty interesting how, yeah, I love it when that happens and everybody gets along, because then it's just like, I don't know, your network of friends expands, and you can all like you visit each other and hang out and whatever. And
Hmm.
yeah, it's pretty crazy when it does happen,
Hmm.
but I think it's really cool when it works out.
So where do you think your adult maturity finally kind of kicked in? Because it's
I
crazy
think
to think
mine
about us
having adult
being.
maturity, man.
You say you still don't think you have it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a big assumption, man, on your part that I got adult at all.
Dude, you're running your own business, and no matter how popping it is now at the or it's not. I mean, just I think that we take a lot of things for granted. In that the I think the confidence that a lot of our parents helped us have from an early age has had lasting effects on how we've carried ourselves. And
Yeah,
yeah, and like you and I aren't where we hope to be, or we hoped to be maybe at a younger age. But I think the way
yeah,
that we maybe handle certain situations, or just the even way we show up at work, right? Uh, we're not showing up too late every day, or we're not half-assing things. I think these are things that, especially our parents, would would like will drilled in us as kids.
yeah. I mean, yeah, my parents are both self-employed, so in that way, like
There you
I've
go.
always looked up to them, like
Right.
how they do things, and um, like, yeah, that's always been a big inspiration for me. Like, just watching them how they run their business and all that. But like also a part of that is like, for me, I used to get a lot more, I think, like frustrated, like, like because when my mom was even in her mid 20s or something, I think she was like working part time, had her own
Mm-hmm.
house
Mm-hmm.
like in Santa Monica,
Mm-hmm.
and like,
Oh, right,
was like,
right,
and saving money, so
right.
the world was a different place,
Sure.
and so like, and kind of like as much support that we've had, like it's also like it's much harder for us to like be homeowners at this age,
Right.
with the type of work that we do, unless we kind of like whatever job that's out there where I could buy a house, like at
Yeah.
this stage, like, let me know. But but or in the Bay or whatever. But I mean, we could be house owners in Missouri or something like that, right? But it's just a different world too. So I think that's a part of it, and I think that's a part of like your adult maturity is just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like um, accepting of your situation and like just being realistic about it, and then you can go from there. And
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I think also for a long time operating the assumption of like, oh, just like you get older and then things happen, you get a house and blah blah blah, or kids or
Yeah.
whatever your thing is like, as I think for maybe our parents and maybe their parents too, it was like, okay, like college, job, house, like these things just sort of happen.
Yeah.
But
Right. It was like it seemed like they had a model for the model to success. It was pretty
yeah,
laid out in front of them.
yeah, I mean, and but like, as like the world we're living in now is just so different than it was then, in
Mm-hmm.
almost every aspect that you can think of. So we're just kind of dealt a different hand of cards, really, is what I think.
Yeah.
And I'm cool with it. Like at
Right.
the end of the day, like I still am doing what I want to do. Like if I want to be a homeowner someday, that's just gonna happen for me later in life than my
Right.
parents who like, or I mean, yeah, just those people like that age even who could
Mm-hmm.
like afford to do that much easier, because their
Mm-hmm.
dollar basically went a lot farther than ours does. That's how I
Right.
see it. Um,
Very obscure question, but your 10-year-old self, if he's looking at you right now,
yeah,
so that was probably the last time we really saw each other, right? 11 to, or like for, extended periods of time, 11, 12 year old.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
We're looking at each other now. What would your younger self be most impressed about you right now or things?
I think, hmm, interesting. I think he would be like impressed with, I mean, that I'm doing what I'm doing, I guess. That I haven't like changed course when I
Yeah.
could have, I
Right.
suppose. Not that you still can't, but um, yeah, I think that would be like, just kind of like saying, yeah, I'm a business owner would be like a trip, I think, for a kid to hear.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I think my 10-year-old self thought I'd be like living in a space station with like a red Corvette or something, though. So, he might
Yeah.
be a little disappointed, but that's okay.
Yeah. Nah, man. Yeah, it is like as we're talking, I'm just remembering so many things that like walking. Do you remember walking from all those times walking from like Montero all the way back to our stopping at Alex Goldberg's house for milk and cookies, literally milk and cookies.
Alex Goldstein, man.
Goldstein, yeah, Alex Goldstein, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That dang. Yeah, dude, if you missed the bus, that was like the halfway refuge. Like, please, Alex. So we had to walk all the way from Montana.
Man, yeah, it's just so much, man. It's like all the memories are coming back to me now. It's how long do you think you'll stay in the Bay for?
I mean, I have no plans of leaving right
Right,
now. You
right,
know, this is like this is my community. Like before the lockdown and after, you know, like there's a lot of um, I mean, music is my life, you know, and like I just really feel connected to the scene here and everybody that's
for
here.
sure.
Um, and like, so I want to just keep doing that and just, you know, like kind of add my piece to the scene here and
Right.
the community and all my friends are here and stuff too. So, but something I would like to do and like, you know, I think it's been a part of my plan is to be based here, but then also like go live in other places for a few months at a time and then come back, you know, and kind of
Yeah.
switch that around. And like that's actually like more possible now than ever, especially
Right.
with work being so remote, you
Everything's
know.
remote.
Yeah. So because I still really love traveling and I'd really love to like embed myself in a different place for a while and kind of get to know it, you know.
Yeah,
But
and you could literally do your lessons and you know produce and send music. You could do all that right
yeah,
via electronically now.
yeah, yeah. Me and my girlfriend are talking about maybe doing that in Mexico sometime next year.
Man, everyone's in Tulum right now,
I guess so. Yeah,
huh?
that would be cool. I think
Yeah,
it might be that's a little bit of different time zone. I'd have to do like West Coast.
like Rosarita or something on this side,
Oaxaca actually is where
Oaxaca.
yeah. And I'd love to go back to Vietnam and like stay there for a while. I went there a couple times and one of my friends lives over there now. We stayed with him and I just it was just a really cool place. So yeah.
Is that the if you had to say one place was the best place you traveled to, that would be it, Vietnam?
It was one of the best like places I've been
Or
to. Yeah.
what's the best? I know we have to get out of here soon.
That's a tricky one. I'll just say that for now. Vietnam's the best. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, man, Steve, man, I appreciate you. Man, I should be home sooner than later, and I'd love to reconnect with you. But what
Sure.
is you talked about the lasting legacy you want like to leave in the area? You know, your imprint. What is more in depthly? What is a lasting legacy that you hope to leave, man?
Oh God. I mean, I think like, you know, this year has been really like testing for everybody, and I think also has been I've been contemplating like this thing actually more than ever before. I think, you know,
Hmm.
just like what is it I want to give, and man, I'm not, you know, I don't know, I think I just would like people to like talk to each other more and like build more of their own community, like local, like
Hmm.
you know, get to know the people around you and get to know people who are different than you and maybe you don't see eye to eye with. Like you know, not to get like too political or whatever, but I just think we got a lot of like important stuff ahead of us, you know, that's that we can't really do it by ourselves and divided. So
Were you surprised at all about what was going on this year? And not COVID now. I mean, you brought it up. Were you
mhm.
surprised because the amount of people that reached out to me to text me and say, "Hey, I'm so sorry about what's going on," which did nothing for me, and or had no idea that quote unquote it was this bad. Like I don't know, man. I want to hear from the perspective of someone that's not an African American but grew up in the same place that I did. That you know, what I thought this stuff was pretty obvious. What was going
Yeah,
on?
you, like I wasn't like I mean, I wasn't surprised. I guess I was surprised at how many people showed up
I was too.
for the
Definitely,
George
absolutely.
Floyd uprising. I
Right,
guess that's what they call it, you know, like
right,
that was surprising to me
right.
because there had been lots of stuff like that before that people were just kind of like, oh,
Exactly. There
there
goes
it goes
another one.
again. Yeah, yeah. And yeah, in a way, I was kind of surprised, but then again, like these things, I think that's one of the things where like ultimately I think it's a good thing that so many people are involved now, like because and that I don't know, like that whatever you want to call it, like Black Lives Matter is like spearheading this thing because it's actually on all of us,
Right.
It's definitely hitting, man, Siri, I never want to talk to Siri. She always trying to interrupt me. Um, yeah, I was surprised that many people showed up, but like we all kind of, that's the thing. It's like when you talk about like defunding the police or racial justice, to me is actually about like the wider systems, which is kind of more of a, you know, big business type of thing. We're talking about like, well, why are the police, so dressed up, or why is this happening, and why are the prisons so filled up, and a lot of that goes into really big questions about like, I don't know. That's a whole other podcast, man. But yeah, it is true. It's just like that. I mean, this stuff has been going on since like, we have Oscar Grant Plaza now, right? And how many years
Right.
ago was that? And then
Right.
like this year, like we had the biggest, protests in like history of our country, It's
Right.
like, so I think it's a good thing that more and more people are on board who would maybe, yeah, just have the luxury to kind of just be like, well, it doesn't affect me, so
Right.
I don't want to look at this, because
Yeah.
that makes you ask a lot of questions, uncomfortable questions of yourself too, or like maybe the people around you. Um, and that's kind of where I'm like more like, well, let's just talk. Like more dialogue is better than like, well, I'm not ever going to talk to you again because
Right.
of this or that,
Right.
I think more discussion, more dialogue is better than just not talking to people and being like, I mean, there's a certain point though where you got to be like taking care of yourself too. You can't
Right.
just try to convince somebody who doesn't see eye to eye with you if they're just too far gone or
Right. But the
whatnot.
conversation, if you can find the patience for that conversation, that's important, obviously, because that's how we got Trump the first time. We
Yeah,
just
yeah,
stopped. Yeah, we just stopped talking about our issues and whatever, and just kind of went on.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, um,
Hey, man, I know you got to go. I really do appreciate
all
you, man.
good.
Yeah.
Do this
Yeah.
again sometime. This was fun, man.
Yeah, for sure. All
Thank
right,
you for
bro. I'll hit
having
you
me.
up when I'm back home, man.
Okay, man. All right. Let me know. Yeah.